you're much more grounded in who you are as an individual, and it's because of all of those experiences.
All day. I mean, adversity really builds you, and like I said before, pressure makes diamonds. And so, if you know you have that value, man, you just got to accept that pressure.
And we're live, cuzzo.
Live and direct.
Hit him with that intro.
Welcome back, man, to the Electors Podcast. This will be episode 22. 23. Oh, man, I'm always one episode behind. But that's a good thing, though. That means that we're shooting a lot, and that we're trying to pump out these episodes as much as we can for you guys. And we have another special guest today. We have Alex Perez here with us.
Welcome, brother.
Aurora's own. He's in the city now. He forgot about the little people. No, I'm just kidding. But no, we're thankful to have him here, and we're gonna get into a few different topics. We're gonna cover a little bit of some politics, some of the stuff that he has working on, as well as some grassroots stuff, and just have a conversation. So with that being said, man, first and foremost, once again, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me here.
And let's get right into it, man.
Tell us a little bit about your background, man. Where you from? Where'd you grow up?
Yeah. Born and raised in Aurora, Illinois. Grew up on the east side. I'm from Sophisburg. Grew up on the east side with my grandparents and my mom. So Sophisburg and then Grove Street. Those are the two streets in Aurora that I grew up on primarily. Went to Cowherd. Let me back it up. I went to Johnson Elementary School. That's where I started my elementary school.
Okay.
Then went to Cowherd Middle School. And then from there, East Aurora High School.
Yep.
Graduate, class of 2010. Shout out to class of 2010. Yeah. We'll probably never meet with each other because I think we all hate each other. But just know that I love most of you all, and I hope everybody's still good. Shout out to class of 2010.
Yeah.
And I went to Waubonsie Community College. Shout out to Waubonsie too, man. Shout out to all my people at Waubonsie. Then from there, I went to Columbia College, got my BA, and then went to Aurora University, got my master's, my MBA.
Nice.
And that's like my educational background. Working, I started as an intern working for the city of Aurora. That's kind of how I think I got into like politics and governmental work. Worked there for like 5 years. Worked out of the shout out to the old TV station, Wayne's World. I don't know if anybody still remembers that, but worked in the mayor's office. Went from there, went to the school district 129. I had to switch sides a little bit. They were paying, so like I know East Side all day. Listen, I get it, but hey, they was cutting the check, so I was like, listen, West is best for a little bit, for the time being.
Yeah.
From there, I just dipped out to Chicago, and just started chasing opportunities and dreams out there, and it's been great. It's been great, man.
Nice.
How's that been going in the city? Is it different? A lot different than being here in Aurora?
There are differences, yes. I will say there are definitely, me and Malcolm were talking about earlier, there's definitely differences. One being that like green space. So like right behind my apartment, like we're fortunate enough, we live in a really great area. Shout out to Bronzeville, shout out to the community, man. Shout out to 46 and Vincennes Block Club. I rock with y'all, love y'all. But we're right behind a community garden, and it's pretty dope. But in Chicago, there are green spaces. Obviously, in the more denser areas, there's green spaces a commodity, like I was telling Malcolm. But in the South Side, there are spaces, but there's not a lot of spaces that you can utilize, right, for like that type of communal gathering and growing of things and sharing of knowledge and culture. And so to be like living right behind one where the whole block is involved and like they throw like community gatherings all the time, it's just dope. You don't really see a lot of that out here, at least like when I was growing up in Aurora.
Right.
There are some community gardens that I'm aware of, but they're not like a focal point, I guess, within the community. And I think that's because like the difference is where in the city, folks tend to like, it's again, usable green space is not in abundance.
Right.
So when you have a space like that, people really cherish it. They really enjoy it. They come together, really trying to protect that.
Yeah.
And so that's a definitely difference. And everybody has cars.
Yeah.
Everybody has cars.
Yeah.
Like I know more neighbors that don't have cars now than when I was living in Aurora. Like, just about everybody had a car or was trying to get a car. Because, everything's spread out. There's so much, everything's just spread out vastly out here versus in the city. Everything's, got to be a little more compact. Everything needs to be a little more accessible and reachable. So
nice.
Those are some of the differences.
Nice. Now, did you ever see yourself as a gardener?
Nah, never.
Yeah.
Which is funny because like I said, my grandparents, they live in the township, so they got like a little piece of land. They garden and stuff. They do a lot of gardening, but I never got anything. Like I would help them move the mulching or the soil and whatnot.
Yeah.
There was never actually interest until now. I got I was with my son and my wife, and we're gardening. They were gracious enough, the block club, to give us a little plot. And so let's try it. And we tried it, man. It was so therapeutic, man.
Yeah.
I was
that's
tripping.
something
I
we
feel
talked
bad
about,
because I used to like talk smack. Like, there's no way gardening
make
could be
fun of-
therapeutic.
Yeah.
And here I am. I had to call my boy. He's like
Yep.
a plant doula. I was like, I apologize, brother. This is real. Like,
Yeah.
I felt very like relaxed.
No,
doing
yeah,
that.
man. No, yeah.
What are you planting over there?
Right now we planted some peppers. We planted some. I like to make steaks. I love on Friday night after a long week. Listen, a little filet
Yeah, I've
mignon,
seen some of
I
your
tried,
Chef
man.
Ramsay
Chef
videos
Ramsay.
you made, for IG.
Listen.
Man. He throws down.
Bobby
No,
Flay,
seriously. He
I'm
throws
coming for
down.
you, baby. I'm coming.
He does. He throws down.
So I planted some rosemary in there. So I like, throw some organic rosemary on the steak, whatnot. But some rosemary, some peppers, tomatoes, small little heirloom grape tomatoes. So we're starting small. We don't want we know it's a marathon. You know what I'm saying? It's not a race. We gotta just build it up, right? So we starting small. See how it goes. We still got a little bit more land to use, so we'll see how it goes.
Yeah,
Nice,
that's
man.
what's up, man. You gonna start gardening soon?
I think so, man. Honestly, so like my girlfriend and I, we've talked about this before. Like, we eventually would love to have a nice piece of land where we could garden. Because with everything that you see happening in America, with all the health issues and different things like that, more doctors are saying it is probably better if you can grow your own food,
Right.
and try to get it as close to, organic standard as possible.
Right.
So yeah, I don't see us having, a whole entire, like
a compound.
super farm. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm not saying it's going to be anything big like that, but maybe something like a 10 by 10.
There you go.
That's not
And
bad.
get
That's a good start.
your veggies, your spinach,
Right.
your kale, your stuff like that.
Get some chickens. Get some eggs.
Now you're starting
maybe.
going to the compound.
Yeah,
Get
maybe,
back down.
maybe.
Get one or two, man. Just get one or two in a rooster. You'll be
I'm not
all right.
gonna say it's not a possibility.
Is it expensive to buy some chickens out here? Is that
I don't know.
I think
to be
chickens
honest
are
with you.
cheap. I think
you could
chickens are
probably-
cheap. Like the actual chicken is cheap.
But I'd be honest, I'd have to do way more research on
Yeah.
how to raise chickens, how to
That's a
make
whole
sure
different
they're-
ballgame right
yeah,
there. That's
'cause then
a whole
I, 'cause
different
then I think
ballgame.
like I would. Then you got to ask, okay, you want free range chickens? You want
Right.
do you want
Right.
to put them in cage?
What are we gonna do with the eggs that come out of that?
Yeah,
baby?
man.
Yeah.
It's a whole business model we're talking about.
Yeah.
That's true, man.
But with that being said, man, let's segue into something else, man, that I think is huge. Obviously, yesterday, we're shooting on Monday today, which is actually Juneteenth, right?
So happy Juneteenth, everybody.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But yesterday was Father's Day, and you have a 1-year-old, correct?
13 months, yeah.
13
Yep,
months.
yep,
Yeah,
yep.
yeah. See, that's interesting. Like, all the parents, it's always like in the
No,
first
see,
few
I was indoctrinated. Like
You
my
indoctrinated?
wife and
Yeah.
every other parent indoctrinated
Got
me
you.
because you can't say 1-year-old like
Uh-huh.
like they look at you like excuse
Yeah.
me like 13
Yeah.
months. I'm like, okay, listen, I'm sorry.
You gotta be
13
politically correct.
Right, 13 months. Please don't hurt me.
Right.
So what's that been like, man? And this is your second Father's Day, but what's that been like, being a father and being in politics at the same time?
It's challenging. It is definitely challenging. I'm just by nature, like, I'm a guy that goes. I'm cut from the same cloth as like my grandfather. That man's gonna die working, and so I kind of like I hope to not have my work consume as much of my life like as it has for my grandfather. But I just know that it's something that I enjoy doing and I like to work. But at the same time, like now that I'm married, I have a wife and kid. It is difficult because you have to maintain them as well, right? You want to make sure that they're good at all times, but at the same time, like being an elected official, like you have constituents, you have community members that have elected you to a position to represent them and make sure that they're good too.
Right.
And so it is tough, especially when you throw a kid in the mix, a young kid too. First time being a dad, it's all uncharted waters to me. Like, you could read every book out there, you could watch every YouTube video out there, until you're actually like in it. It's really hard to grasp that concept and grasp like the amount of energy and time and dedication that you need to commit. But it's at the same time, besides it being challenging, because it is a challenge, it's extremely rewarding. It is like I didn't really see myself as a parent. When I was growing, I was like, man, I ain't trying to have no kids. But once I had Julian, my son, that really changed. I think for me it was a little strange because a lot of the guys that have kids, they were telling me like, when you first meet your kids, can change your life. And when I first saw my kid, I was like, wow. And then that was like the initial reaction.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, I'm holding like a human being in my hands.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like this, crazy moment for me. It was more like a build up to more moments. And so like
Gotcha.
slowly but surely, I think the bond between my son and I has grown stronger. But I just want to be there and try. We talk about being present.
Yeah.
And I try to be as present as possible. I understand that there's days and nights where I'm working till like 1 a.m. And he has a bedtime. He's got to be in bed by 7:30. So that also makes it challenging because I only have like a small window from like what time I get off from my regular job at 5.
Right.
Making dinner. I make dinner for everybody, and then we got to get him ready to go to bed. So like during the week, I don't really get a lot of time to spend one-on-one with him. So I try to carve out time like on Sundays where like this amount of time is just for the fam, and it is an ongoing challenge. It's something that's never really going to go away. But I hope I'll have him tell me later on like how it goes.
Yeah.
But I hope I'm doing a good. I think I'm doing an okay job if I had to give myself. Well, I'll have him rate me later on when he's able to do it. Like hopefully he gives me 5 hours. 5 stars. 5 stars would recommend. For the next kid. If we end up having a next kid, 5 stars would recommend. But I think I'm doing an okay job.
Nice. Now you bring up possibly a second or maybe third. Would you guys like to have more?
We've talked about it. Like honestly, if you ask me right now, I'm one and done, baby. Like if you ask me right now, I'm one and done. But that could change. The possibility is out there. I think we had a kid at an age where it's like we're still not old, but we're not like extremely young anymore. But we're like right in the middle. So like if we do decide to have another kid in the next like 3-4 years, like we're solid. We could do it. So I think that's a good enough window for us to explore. What life is with like one child. Yeah. And then should we decide to want to have another one, we still have a nice window where we're like, let's do it.
Nice.
So,
nice.
it's yeah.
Because the reason why I asked that is because I've heard people say like, oh, well, you don't want your kid to like have only child syndrome.
Everybody hits me with that.
Yeah. And I don't even have kids and I hear it sometimes. Like they're like, well, if you're going to have one, you might as well have 2.
Everybody keeps saying that. But here's the thing, man. Expensive. Like, come on. They cost some coin. True. They cost some coin, man. And that's something you really have to think about, especially in this day and age when we're talking about like the onset of a possible recession. We're talking about inflation. Everything costing more. Like you really have to take that into consideration too. But don't let that stop you. For folks that have one that want to have a second one, don't let that stop you. Right. For me and my wife, it's just more like we're looking at the timing now. Like now that we've got our first one, we wanted to have a kid, had our kid. Okay, now we take a step back and analyze. Like, do we want a second one? If we do want one, okay, what's the window? And that's the beautiful thing, about having a partner that like supports you and you guys are on the same page for the most part. Like, you guys can sit back and look at those things together, it just makes for a much better experience overall.
Shout out to wifey.
Shout out to wifey.
Shout out to wifey.
Yeah, because that's huge, man. Time is probably the most difficult thing to manage over money. Because sometimes, like you said, 2 hours, 2.5 hours, that's not a whole lot. It's not a whole lot. That could suck. Because if you throw another one in there, now you got to split it up now. Right. So yeah, that's probably the biggest hurdle is managing time.
No, it makes sense, man. It makes sense. And then also too, and David talks about this a lot, like with his daughters, different personalities. You have one kid who maybe is more not clingy in a bad way, but that just wants more dad time. Right. And then the other one is just like, okay, his oldest now is getting to an age where she kind of wants her little independence, and so it's finding that balance, So, but yeah, man.
And then aside from challenges, running for office, with kids and family life, what are the challenges inside the arena, or so to speak? When you're inside, you're already on campaigns, you're in the office. Yeah. What are those challenges like?
I mean, equally tough. I would say that. I mean, we made history on February 28th of this year. We made history by electing people that are from the community to represent us in all things police related in the city of Chicago. And that's a huge thing. People have been fighting for that for like 50 years. Yeah. And so to have that finally pass has been an amazing thing. And, and that's what captivated me to want to pursue this. But the challenge is it's tough. It's tough. It's not for the faint of heart, Right. The crazy part is that it's a part-time job, but we're putting in full-time hours, full-time work. Right. And we do get paid, not even close to what we should be getting paid. But right. I didn't come in this for the money, and I came in it for the opportunity to do something dope that's never been done before, and to give my community something better. Yep. And it is a challenge because we're building the ship as we're sailing, and we're building the plane. Whatever analogy you want to associate to it, it's being built while we're in the air, in the sea. And that's gonna leaks are going to happen. Some boards that might pop out a little bit that you thought were secure. And that's happening, and it's going to continue to happen. But you just got to stay, you got to stand steady, like everybody said, you got to stay 10 toes down, and it's easier said than done, especially because, with our office, unfortunately, I've said this before in other interviews, like the mayoral campaign took a lot of, took precedence. A lot of the media, most of the media was focused on the mayoral, election. You had Brandon Johnson, Paul Valles, Lori. And then you had the aldermanic elections too, which typically are always number two. Well, you throw a third one in the mix, and this obscure one that, even though it was voted on, nobody really knows about it. And so we were dealing with a lot of misinformation, people just not knowing, people just really confused. And so we're dealing with the byproduct of that now, where, if you see some of the other district councilors where they're having meetings in their district, people are upset, they're confused. What is this? Like, you know what I mean? And that is because just folks just didn't want to talk about us. And that's one of the big challenges, is just educating people, man. Like, before we can even get started on our work, it's educating people on who we are, what we are, why we exist, why this ordinance came about, and just educating them. That's one of the biggest challenges.
Why do you think that some of the community, I shouldn't say why some of the community, but why it's so difficult sometimes for the community to trust people in office and people that are running and so on and so forth?
You know what? Listen, I've gotten this question before, and we were campaigning. People would ask me, like, why should I care?
Yeah.
Why should I care about you specifically, right? What are you going to do different? And I got to give the same answer. Is like, you're totally right in your feeling to not trust folks. We've seen time and again, whether it's local or national news, elected officials not doing their job, not caring about the community, really just being in it for themselves. So. All that anger and confusion is totally warranted. I'm never gonna fight nobody, because there are times when I feel the same way, exact same way. But I ran to try and challenge that.
Right.
I really wanted to. I didn't want to sit on the sidelines and just be another person that's just talking. Right. I think there's enough of that. I wanted to actually get in the game. I felt like I have the ability to commit to this, right? And I want to see, okay, what does it look like on the inside? How bad is it? How good is it? Whatever. I wanted to be, boots on the ground and see it firsthand. And people are mad because it's another layer of bureaucracy. People are saying, oh, here's another office that our taxpayer dollars are going to go to pay some more people to just do nothing, And so, again, I think they're wrong in that, in the fact that we're not going to do anything. We are going to do something. Right. Unfortunately, or fortunately, this is based on individuals, right? So it's going to be, you're going to be either as strong or as weak as the individuals that are representing you, sure. Right? I think in our district, and in a bunch of other districts, there are some very strong individuals that are really about their business and really care for the community and are doing this for the right reasons. But there are folks in other districts that it's questionable. But I think it really, the beautiful thing about this is it really falls on the individual, and the people can hold us accountable. Right. The people we answer to the people in our district, and so if they don't see us doing the work, they call us out. There is a system or a process for removal of an elected official within this office. It is a difficult one, but it exists. And so I would always tell people, you exercise that. Yeah, man. But to answer your question, I'm here to do something different. I'm here to listen, and I'm here to lead. But the first one is the most important one, to listen. Right. Because there's so many people that they don't really listen. They'll tell you they're listening. They'll take some notes down, but are they really consuming the information and that you're providing to these individuals? And that's what I want to change. That's what I'm here to do. Like I said on the campaign trail, I want to modernize how we communicate. With folks, how the community and the police communicate. Yep. And that's what I bring to the table.
Do you think that like representation is one of those things that helps that kind of is a bridge for the communication, right? Because like if somebody comes from let's say from outside of the community, and they come in, right, and they're trying to sell to the people, hey, I want you to buy what I'm selling, and they don't look like them, they don't talk like them, they, sometimes there's a disconnect, right? And then if that person does get elected, well, then the community doesn't trust them even more, because once they see how selfish they are, they're like, okay, you're just another outsider who's coming in for his own selfish reasons. But like someone like yourself, who you look like the people from the area in which you're in, you grew up in the Chicagoland area, so you're a reflection of the communities that were built here. Does that make a big difference when it comes to uniting the community?
I definitely say it does. Unfortunately, I think it's a double-edged sword, because we do want people that look like us to represent us, specifically in areas where folks look like us, right? Whether that be a racial complexion or a socioeconomic background, we want that, right? And that makes it easier for us to relate with those individuals and support those individuals. But I think too often we've seen that there are folks that look like us, right? Come from the same backgrounds, but they're not in it for us, right? And even though they look like us, they're operating for their own gain, right? And we see it happen all the time, and so that's tough because as minorities, we want to balance that. And we want to try and balance, like, we do want that representation, right? That's what we're fighting for, representation. But we need the proper representation. And I think that falls on us to make sure that we're vetting folks to the best of our abilities to make sure there's not another George Santos. Because there's a lot more George Santos out in the world than people realize. Let me throw that out there. That is not an isolated incident. That person is not an isolated incident. There are way more George Santoses in government or elected positions or just leadership positions than we know out there. And it really, really falls on the community to vet. I mean, like I said, I love to see people with black and brown faces that represent me, but I just want to make sure, and I hope everybody else feels the same way, is that we just want to make sure it's the right black and brown faces that are going to be there for us. I agree. To be there for the community when we need them, not when it's like convenient.
Right. No, I agree. No, that's very well said, man. Very well said.
Yeah. So to segue, what has been your experience with the campaign trail? Because I had a buddy in college and he majored in political science, and he was there for the whole Obama run, which was pretty dope. Yeah, it was. But what has your experience been like in the campaign trail in Chicago? Or I don't know if you did anything in Aurora, but if you did, what has those experiences been like?
So my original like introduction into campaigning in politics was actually in Aurora. A lot of people don't know, I actually ran for school board. I ran for the East Aurora District 131 school board.
Oh, nice.
And I was green. I think I was like 21 at the time, maybe 22. And so me being a young buck, hard-headed, I was like, I got it. So I tried to read everything. I was like, okay, you need 50 signatures. You got to go grab this packet. Well, I didn't realize that, you want to get more than the recommended amount of signatures, because if you get challenged, you have a higher probability of surviving a challenge. And what I mean by being challenged is like, if let's say an individual doesn't live in a specific area where you can only get signatures from a specific region, right? Sometimes people don't realize that they're not within a specific region, right? They might just be like a hair outside of that line, right? But they're ineligible. For me, the situation was, I had folks from my church sign my petition, but unfortunately, a couple of them were undocumented, and they didn't know their status. And so when that got brought up, it was made known that they were undocumented. So it brought me below. I think I had like 51 signatures. You needed 50, right? So I think it was like 4 individuals. And so they brought me down. I got taken to court. Shout out to former Alderman Judge Lafshay for representing me on the fly, man. I appreciate it. We lost that case, but you had that dog in you that day, baby. I loved it. I loved the effort.
Yes, sir.
That man argued his life out for me.
That's good stuff,
I appreciate it.
You need people like that, man.
You do. Shout out to Judge, man. Real talk. I appreciate that.
That's what's up, man.
And that was wild. Like I got kicked off the ballot, and it was a kind of a traumatic process. But I left that courthouse with my head held high, because you know what, I had never in my life thought that I would be able to do something like that. So it was still a win regardless of how I took it. Now, did I think that I ever get back into politics again? Absolutely not. I was like, man, this is vicious, it's brutal, it's kind of crazy. And that was Aurora, bro. It was a school board, an unpaid position. Yeah. But fast forward now, I think it was that experience that helped give me that that slight edge, honestly, that a lot of folks that I seen, were campaigning for this similar position didn't really have. And so the second time around, I feel like I went from Aurora, didn't make it. Chicago, this is the big leagues.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
right?
Man,
that type of
you're going you're going from the minors, man, to the big leagues.
Honestly, you know what I'm saying. And so, it was a little daunting, but I do. The experiences that I took from the school board situation was like, read everything, strategize way in advance, make sure you have a complete understanding of what the expectations are, and that definitely helped keep me afloat. I will say that, because there's challenging times. Like, this is Chicago, it's a whole different ballgame. There's a lot of mistrust, there's a lot of bureaucracy. Everything's amplified. Whatever you're dealing with in the city of Aurora, amplify that times 10 in Chicago. Right. No, makes sense. Yes, that was tough, man. We talk about Mamba mentality, right? Yeah. Mamba mentality in a positive way. Yeah. I was out there, and the worst part about this was this election. The process was in the middle of winter. It's cold as hell. Yeah. So like, I'm standing out in Mariano's, bro, for like 3 hours. I'd get off of work, I'd go make my wife dinner, and then for 2 hours I'm sitting outside of Mariano's trying to get petitions. Wow. And for me, I had to gather something like 400. Yeah. But they obviously say in Chicago you want triple that. So I was trying to get like 1,600 signatures. Yeah. At Mariano's at night, man. I was at night in the snow. I mean, there was one time like they just like pour like an inch of snow, and I'm out there, man. I was just getting signatures, like walking. You know what I mean? So but that was skin in the game, man.
No, yeah, and that's something that we do talk about on the podcast is like mentality, mindset, and I'm glad you brought up your experience when you were 21 and 22 because we talk about all the time, man. Like you're gonna bump your head. I don't care what you do, what pursuit, what passion or what purpose you try and pursue, you're gonna bump your head. But hopefully you can bump it enough when you're early, so that when you're closer to our age, like that life experience now, it comes full circle.
Completely,
it
helps
and
propel
you got thicker skin now.
All
You're not as
day.
you're not as easily moved or easily swayed. You're much more grounded in who you are as an individual, and it's because of all of those experiences.
All day. I mean, adversity really builds you, and like I said before, pressure makes diamonds. And so, if you know you have that value, man, you just gotta accept that pressure. Because it comes with it. If you're not taking L's, if people aren't laughing at you, then you're not really trying. And I've said that before. I've said it to college students before. It's like, look, you're gonna get laughed at. You're gonna take some L's. You're gonna fall down. It is a process of success. You cannot, very rarely in life can you get success without actually getting hit, beat up, by life, taking those L's. Like that's part of it. Like if and the way I look at it is like that's like paying your dues. I look at it as paying your dues, and we all have to do that. Like you can't expect success without any type of sacrifice. It's always some sort of sacrifice with it.
And with that, we'll take a quick break.
Cool. Yeah. Be $100 a minute.
Right,
man. Next time we see
have
this
guys
guy
standing at the door.
Right.
Yeah.
Nobody can come
cut out
in.
Secret Service.
Come on.
Yeah.
Oh man! All right, we back from the break, man, and
Cool.
So let's keep it going, man. You were talking about life experience, taking L's and stuff like that. Talk about a little bit of some of the L's you took growing up to get you where you are today.
Man, I mean, one of them was failing a failed attempt at trying to get on the school board. That was my first political L. I remember when I went to go work for the Westboro School District. That just didn't work out for me, and that was a really big situation for me. I was dealing with a lot of things in that role that were affecting me, in terms of my mental health, and I had to step away from that situation, and that to me that was a huge professional L I thought I was never going to recover from. But again, I would go back and do it all the same because it motivated me to pursue my master's degree, which ultimately was such a blessing in disguise for me and kept me focused in really, dark times. I mean, we went through a pandemic. The only thing that I had going for me, I was unemployed. So the only thing that kept me going was, trying to finish my master's degree. A lot of people don't know, but I actually applied for a cannabis business license as a social equity applicant. We built a whole framework for a business. We raised a little over $500,000, all black and brown money.
Wow.
And, we were one of the very few teams, to actually make it to the finish line. And when I say finish line, actually get into the lottery, not once but twice. And that's off the score that we got. I mean, we got a better score than people that actually had licenses and actually had brick and mortar dispensaries in other states.
Wow.
And so, those are we didn't make it. And some people might look at that as an L. I look at it as a dub, though. I mean, again, we didn't talk about it. We went on and did the damn thing. And I'm proud of every single teammate that I had on there. We did great stuff. I mean, those are just some of the L's. I mean, I could talk about, if we want to go back to high school, I got.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what about some childhood L's that you took that kind of shape your mindset? Because we all go through our own stuff, and then it puts you in a mindset so that when something else comes up as you get older, you're just like, wow, that ain't nothing. I already been through the trenches.
Honestly, it's my turn to a therapy session.
Yeah, it can be very on the surface, man.
No,
we just
listen.
covering very on the surface.
My teenage years were tough. I struggled a lot in school, and not because I was not intelligent. I struggled because the school district that I was in at the time, it wasn't that great of a school district. I gotta be flat out. The foundation that I received was very shoddy, and that really hurt me. Throughout my career, from middle school all the way to college, honestly, and that was.
So real quick now that you're saying, because you went through public school, right?
Yeah.
So now that you have a son, what is your take on that? Because we talk about it, private versus public, and my children are in private because I refuse to send them to public school.
Fair enough.
I just don't agree with it.
Fair enough.
What's your how do you feel about that?
Man, it's tough because I know private school it costs a lot of money. But honestly, my wife and I've had the conversation because she's very much aware of my situation and what I went through in public school. I really think it comes down to the parents being involved as well. Not everybody can send their kid or afford to send their kid to private school, but I think if you have the ability, right, to step in and be that overseer, you know, and watch and maintain a watchful eye over your child, right, then that's going to have to be something that you're going to have to step up and do. You know, for me, whether they go to private or public, like I plan to be present, to make sure that they're getting the education that, one, they deserve, and that, two, we paying for it. Because whether it's private or public, we paying for that bad boy.
Right.
So, you know, I want to make sure that they're getting, because they're getting what they deserve. Because here's the thing, you know, even though I didn't have the best experience in school when I was in school, there were still teachers that stood out, right? There were still individuals where I was like, yeah, that person right there, yeah, shout out to Miss Sieber, shout out to Miss Denude, I'm rocking with y'all, Miss Helvey, love y'all. And those are some of the individuals right there, that I'm naming off top that really helped me out. And so I know that if my kid goes through public, there's probably going to be some of those individuals. And so how do we empower those individuals? How do we support those individuals to make sure that that type of education experience doesn't just end when my kid walks out of their classroom, but it continues when they walk into the next person's classroom, so on and so forth. And I think that gap is bridged by the parents themselves, right? Checking in, okay, well, what are you learning? And then can I be an accessory to this education, right? Can I also add, because we're teachers, straight facts. We're teachers as well. We might not look at it as like, you know, we're educational teachers, but if anything, we're teaching our kids more than what the teachers they're seeing for like 2-3 hours at a time, or an hour at a time might be, you know, because they're with us all the time. So you have to also look at yourself as an educator. What are you teaching your child? So that's something I think about all the time, you know. Now that he's getting a little older, I have to think about, you know, some of the music that I listen to and, you know, movies that I watch. But I look at myself as an educator for him. So yeah, that's kind of I guess like my take on it.
Yeah, no, that's a good take on it.
No, it is. And like, you know, is there? And I know it's early, right? Because he's only, you know, 13 months, like you said. But with you doing everything that you're doing now, what do you want him to take away from everything that you're doing now when he gets older? Because, you know, there may become a day where he looks back and watches something like this to see like what you were like in those early days, and go, wow, you know, my dad's come a long way.
I mean, honestly, the one thing I want my kid to take away is, don't ever let that dog inside you die, man. Like, I think for me as an individual, knowing the things that I've gone through, the challenges that I faced, it was always that fire. You know, I always look at it. I always think about like Pokemon, like the not Charizard, Charmander. You know, their life force is attached to the flame on their tail. And so for me, you know, I look at it the same way. It's like, as long as that fire keeps going and raging, man, you got a shot. You know what I'm saying? You just gotta lean into that flame and put your faith into it. But don't be afraid to be an independent thinker. Don't be afraid. You know, if you want to go against the grain, don't be afraid to go against the grain, because the masses are going to the left and you want to go to the right. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what I want. I hope that my son takes away, and my future children as well take away from me, is like, you know, like Pops really was an independent voice, and that he was an independent thinker, and that he did that because he cared, and he didn't just want to just go with the flow. Right. You know, I want to be part of history. I don't want to just witness history. I want to be part of it. So I hope that my kid takes that away and you know, elevates that, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And then when you were, when you were going through all this, did you have a mentor or a coach that kind of helped keep you on track, you know, from those days where you're like, nah, man, I'm done.
I mean, I would say I had people, like there were mentors, right? But they're kind of like seasonal. Like people would come in my life, you know, they teach what they need to teach people, and, you know, they would go wherever. But for me, it was really, I look at it as an individual, as a mentor, regardless of whether they believe they're a mentor or not, because each individual has something to teach us. And I believe that firmly. And so I will say that there was individuals throughout my life that I took from, right? I think as a kid, for me at least, my persona came from me taking pieces that I liked from individuals around me. I might not take the whole concept of this individual, right? But there's something that I like about this individual, and I want to insert into my life to help make me better. And so that's kind of how I went about it. Yes, there were some people that stayed longer as a guide, but for the most part, yeah, you know, it was really taking those pieces of folks that I really like. You know, this person taught me to really be on time. That's a great concept. I want to take that from them. Let's be on time. Right. You know, this individual taught me discipline. Okay, and why is discipline so important? I see that. Okay, let me take that real quick. You know, this person is a really great speaker. I love the way they enunciate. I love the way they're so confident. I like that. I want to do that too as well. Let me take that. Let me learn from that. And so that's kind of how it was really for me.
Who's like someone that right now, it doesn't necessarily have to even be in the political realm, but just someone that you look up to right now as far as, everything that they're doing, and that you can kind of pull, like exactly what you just said, that you pull from?
There's a couple. I don't have one specific individual. I love what Mayor Brandon Johnson has done. He was such an underdog, and even though I didn't vote for him the first time, I really appreciate the message that he's been giving out. And even though he's faced criticism, like, he still stood firm on his messages, and so I appreciate that. I think hold on, I don't want to butcher his name, but mental health is a big thing for me, especially when it comes to in regards to men. As you see my IG, John Fetterman, in Pennsylvania. He's somebody that not only do I love his political campaign, but I love the fact that he really embraced, like, look, I have mental health challenges, man. And that's normal, and it's gonna be normal, and that's gonna be part of my identity as a politician, regardless of whether you like it or not. And I'm so happy that he's normalized, or at least is fighting to normalize men's mental health, and that we all struggle with that. So for me, I've talked about him a couple times. Like, he's definitely been somebody that I've looked up to, because, like, we need to normalize men having conversation about their mental health. Like, we struggle a lot more with it than people are really willing to admit. And I've been super happy that he's been one of the strongest voices, I think, for men in leadership positions talking about, like, their struggles. So he's definitely one. I would say, keeping it real, my grandma, like, all the women in my life, I'm gonna keep it a buck. Like, they're probably when people think about the confidence, right, that I have, I think it really comes from the women in my family, man. It's straight up, like, doing what they got to do to get things done, right, regardless of the challenges. And that's really what I've drawn on that for the entirety of my life, man. So I would have to shout them out. Shout out to mom, grandma, my aunt, my cousins.
That's what's up, man. Yeah, man. And I think something too, man, that you realize as you get older, there's a special kind of love that women give off. It's like the divine feminine energy that you just can't, with us, the guys, man, that's a different kind of love, right? Like a brotherly love, a brotherhood love. But like that real just warmth, you can't replace that, man. Like, you can't. And in those moments where, man, you're having an episode, or you're having, like, some mental health issues, man, women don't even some of them do, yes, but they really don't realize how much power they truly, truly have with just having a small conversation with you and seeing that, hey, I just need to give this young man a little bit of life. I don't have to spend money or anything like that. I just got to give him a little bit of love and attention, and it can go such a long way. No,
I mean, that's facts. I mean, when I was campaigning, one of the things that kept me going was thinking about my grandma was in dialysis for, like, man, it was like 13, 14 years, man. And she was a housekeeper at the hospital at Old Mercy. So she would get up at 5 a.m., go do dialysis, which drains you, right? Then go work another, like, 8 hours, come back, make food. I'm like, bro, like, there's no way this is a weak individual. This is an extremely strong individual that's doing all of this, keeping it going, like, like, it's nothing. So I would think about that, man. Then we talk about Mamba mentality. When we talk about Mamba mentality, I'm thinking grandma got it. Grandma had the coin term before Kobe was alive. You know what I'm saying? So I drew on that.
She probably could have beat Kobe 1-on-1 with that kind of mentality.
We're gonna go ahead for the podcast and say grandma, she would hold it down.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about, like, you were talking about your position in office. So tell us a little bit about that, and then I got another question for you right after.
So I'm one of the first cohort of district counselors for the city of Chicago. And so what district council is, it was an ordinance that was passed, and it creates two things. One is the district councils, which are 3 locally elected individuals from each of Chicago's 22 police districts. And then it creates the commission, which are 7 individuals that represent us on more like a higher level in terms of, like, the superintendent of police and then the mayor. And there's only 7 of them. So we as an entity are called the Community Commission for Public Safety and Accountability, which is it's an original, all brand new office that exists to represent the community in regards to all things policing in the city of Chicago. Policing in the city of Chicago has been a very controversial hot topic for a number of years. This all really starts from the state of Illinois suing the city of Chicago, specifically CPD, for a lot of its misuse of power and misconduct. And so once they sued them, CPD had to adhere to guidelines, right, that were implemented by the state. So they have things that they have to, duties that they have to fulfill. So another part of this was then the community said that we want more representation. And so they pushed for this ordinance, which created our office. And so for the first time ever, the city of Chicago, regular individuals have 3 representatives that represent them in all things related to policing and police matters.
That's awesome, man.
So yeah,
Step
so
in the
we're
right
one of the few.
direction, man. Congratulations on this shit,
Yeah,
you know?
congrats.
Seriously,
Thank
that is big.
So with that being a hot topic, how do you plan on going about working with people with the different views? Because there's no middle.
No.
It seems like there's no middle. It's either you're on one side or you're on the other.
It's tough because I am the middle. I'm the one.
Yeah, right?
I'm like kind of the one in the middle.
Yeah.
And no, but you touch on something. It's true. You know, there's a wide range of viewpoints, right? Like we have people that are extremely progressive, and we have people that are extremely conservative, right? And we've seen those, you know, two parties bump heads. But for me, given, you know, look, I've had bad issues with police before. You know, I've been in a couple police raids. You know, I've been hit with DWB a couple times. You know, those things really happen. They're not a myth. They happen.
Right.
But at the end of the day, like when I took this position, I had to remove my personal feelings,
Right.
and put ahead the feelings of the community, right? So for me, it's really about representing the community. And in the second district, which is like Bronzeville, Hyde Park, Oak Park, Kenwood, Washington Park, it's a very big area, but it's a very diverse area. Even though it's like predominantly black, there's black folk from all different types of socioeconomic backgrounds, from, you know, people that are, you know, lower income to people that are very affluent, right? And so with that comes varying degrees of viewpoints on the police. Some people in the more affluent areas, which pretty predictable, are more in favor of police. They want better partnerships. People in the lower income areas typically don't want to hang out with police. They're not in favor for, you know, mixing with the police and working with them, and rightfully so. Again, each area has its challenge. But for me, the reason why I try to stay in the middle ground as a centrist is because, like, I don't believe that one side is right. I think there's truth on both sides. And we have to come at things from as unbiased as possible.
Right.
And I try to rely on data. I try to rely on firsthand accounts, because here's the thing: no one's perfect. And people are gonna mess up. We're gonna make mistakes. But I wanna know that I'm giving the best foot forward and the best effort possible without injecting my own personal opinions and feelings into the situation. There's enough of that already out there. And then I'm not saying that that's wrong. I don't want to sit there and say that, like, the passion, but there's a time and a place. Right. There's a time and a place for that passion to come out and take over. But as an elected official now, I understand that it's not about me. It's about us. Right. And there are those of us who like working with the police and appreciate what they're doing. And there are those of us that don't. And they're not wrong. Your opinion's not wrong. Your opinion's not wrong. Two truths can exist on the same plane of existence. True. But let's get to the meat. Let's get to the meat of the subject. Why do you not like the police? Now, why do you like the police? Okay, where can we find common ground? What are the issues that you're having? How can we accommodate? How can we bring up your level of safety and sentiment regarding your community and police at the same time too, right? Because for me, the way I look at it is like, there's an underlying factor for why these folks over here don't really rock with the cops. Let's talk about that. Let's see. And not just talk. Let's actually commit to some action. What can we do to help raise that up, right? Because it's so low, right? So what can we do? So yeah, it's tough. But the reason why I play the middle is because, like, you know, I think there can be truth on both sides. And if I commit to just one side, then I'm neglecting the possibility of truth on the other side. Right. And now I'm becoming what somebody else.
You're becoming the same thing you're trying to stop.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's just me.
No, yeah. And it's tough to remain objective, and it's tough to also not allow yourself to become overly emotional, right? Because on one side, right, you talk about, like, let's say an experience that someone from a lower income neighborhood or area comes from, that they have with the police, right? And they have a really, really bad experience. It's hard to hear someone go through something like that and to not feel for them, right? And to not get just as upset as they are, right? But to say, like, I hear you, but that doesn't mean that all of a sudden we can just run to the other side and show up with, you know, with baseball bats and you know, ready to take down City Hall. Like, yes, the feeling and the emotion is there, but that's not the logical or rational way to approach this, you know, But
And sometimes baseball bats are no. Let me not say that.
Yeah.
Sometimes the passion,
right, it just needs to
passion
be
is
directed in
right.
a way that's
If
healthy and constructive.
Listen, if folks is acting a fool, and you know what, the only option that we got is we need to organize.
Because sometimes,
you got to do that. That's the route.
Yeah.
But that option will present itself.
Right.
You don't have to force it. It's gonna come.
Right.
You can see it coming.
Right.
That's all I'm saying.
Right.
Right.
No, you're right. You're right.
So what's your future, or what's the future vision, either for the city of Chicago, or do you plan on coming back home and doing something here?
Man, I don't know. It's something that my wife and I talk about all the time. But I love where we're at, man. Like, you know, I love being in Brownsville. Again, shout out to Brownsville. I love being there. It's such a beautiful community, man. You know, I'll say this is funny because, like, in the community garden, right, you know, people, they congregate, right? And so I've met some of the neighbors and the leaders of the local block club. And the first time that we were hanging out, I met this guy's son. He's one of the guys that manages the block club. I met his, shout out to email. I met one of his sons, and we were talking and whatnot. They're just asking me questions like, how do you love the neighborhood and whatnot? I was like, man, bro, real talk. I was like, this is like Naperville to me. You know what I mean? I was like, minus all the white folks. I was, you know, everybody's just black. You know, I was like, this is like Naperville to me. And so for some people like looking on the outside in that have like from the suburbs, they'd be like, they probably laugh like, serious? But for me, like knowing some of the areas I grew up on the east side in the 90s, man. It was a very bad time to be a minority living on the east side in the 90s, you know. I've had 6 family members shot, 3 killed, you know. And so those are some of the backgrounds that I come from. That neighborhood, the neighborhood I live in right now, was the first place in my life that I lived in for a whole year. Didn't hear no gunshots.
Wow.
No gunshots. I lived in Pilsen. I lived in Bridgeport, two neighborhoods in Chicago. Bridgeport, people think it's like there's nothing but cops. There was a drive-by. I'm taking a time test. I think it was on Easter. I'm taking a time test. They did a drive-by like right in front of the apartment I was living in. So that's why. And when I told Emil's son that, he literally looked at me with like this face, man. Like, really? I'm like, yeah, bro. This is a beautiful neighborhood. And he was like, that says a lot. And I know it might sound weird, but to me, like I said, like that's a neighborhood worth fighting for. That's a community worth fighting for, to maintain that level of safety and feeling. Because like I feel safe when I walk. I mean, other people they have their opinions, but look. There's upteen drive-bys when I was living on Grove Street. You know, when I was living on Sofisburg, there was Latin Kings that lived in the surrounding houses. They all got shot up all the time. So violence is nothing new to me. I've lived and grown up in violence my entire life. This is the first place I've lived in, like I said, where I did not hear a single gunshot or drive-by for an entire year. I don't even think I still have. I've been there longer than a year now. I still don't think I've heard a gunshot. You know what I'm saying? And if you come from that, then you appreciate why you want to maintain that. You appreciate why you want to maintain that level of safety and sentiment, and that's what we're fighting for. So yeah, I mean, that neighborhood is beautiful, man. I love it. I really do. The houses are dope. The neighbors, I mean, the neighbors alone make me want to just stay there long term. So I hope we're looking. It's a little pricey. I ain't gonna lie to you. We rent right now, but we've been steadily looking because we want to make a long term investment there. I think it's a great enough place where I would raise my kid.
Right.
And if I'm saying that as a father, as a first time father, then you know it's a good spot.
True.
And so what would be the, I guess, because you grew up here and we talked about it on the last episode, or not the last episode, a couple of episodes with Nick, and we talk about how people.
Shout out to Nick.
Yeah, shout out Nick. We talk about how people, you know, reach a level of success and they leave and they never come back.
Community retention, man.
Yeah, so, you know, seeing as what you're saying, you know, you left, but, you know, it doesn't sound like you're coming back to help, like, the people where you grew up in, which you could maybe change, maybe you can't. But what's the reasons for you not wanting to come back? You know,
it's not. I don't want to say it's not that I don't want to come back. It's just like my life has taken me here, right? Because I wrestled with this. I wrestled with this very question for a very long time, to the point where it would get me depressed, man. Like, did I abandon my town?
Did I left us, man? Come on, LeBron.
And there's some people that will say that. There's some people that say that.
Yeah.
But then for me, I had to really think about, what did I invest into this community prior to my departure? I started a scholarship by myself. Not by myself. I'm sorry, take that back. No, my scholarship associate would be disappointed if I said that. Yeah. I started out the process by myself. Managed to recruit an individual, and we had a scholarship for a couple years. Not only that, but I worked for the city of Aurora. I mean, some of my the start in government came from here, and it started from helping people in the community. My passion for being in the community, doing community work, came from the city. The Hesse House food pantry, I volunteered there for years. I think Malcolm maybe actually came and did I would organize haircuts for the homeless and do makeup stuff for them, and I had tons of barbers that would come out, and so like I've given a lot to the community. In terms of blood, sweat, and tears. Some of my, like I said, I have family members here that have been laid to rest here. Is that a flash?
Oh, we're good. Yeah, we're good. Yeah, the first time, continue with what you're saying.
Go ahead us out. No, so for me, it's not about not wanting to come back. It's just I feel like I served my time here, and the city, it's East Side all day, baby. Come on now. No one's going to take that from me, but the city gave me what I needed to continue moving on forward. And sometimes we can make our legacy in our hometown. That's great. Shout out to you if you can. But sometimes we have to leave the communities to make that legacy that we want.
Yeah, because something I was gonna add to what you just said was now that I think about it, yes, would we all love to see individuals stay here in the city and continue to build the infrastructure? Yes. But something else that I thought about just while I'm listening to the conversation is that you also need allies in different spaces and in different places, right? So you being not completely out of the state of Illinois, but just 45-minute drive,
up the road,
you're still close enough to where you can have an impact on your community whenever you so choose, And also too, I think that, and this is just a testament to life. This is just a testament to being a man and being a husband, being a father. Now, it's your family, your wife and your child now are the most important thing, first and foremost. Your community is always going to be up there.
Always.
But you have to do what's best for you, your wife, and your kid now at this point. And if it means moving over here and staying here and still doing the same things, building the community, building the infrastructure, but I just have to do it over here now. Is something that just comes apart with life,
No, you're 100% right. And if I could touch on something real quick, the community retention part, like I said, I wrestled with that, man. But when I moved to Chicago originally, I was making cheese. I was making real good money. I could have moved to like Lincoln Park or Ravenswood, one of those really, really nice areas. But I chose to move to Pilsen, a predominantly Latino area. I did that specifically because I didn't want to forget my upbringing. I didn't want to forget my background, what I'm saying? And so no diss to people that do that. If you do that, that's great. But for me, I've always looked at it like, but what can I contribute to a community like that? If I move to Naperville, I'm a dime a dozen, out there. I want to make sure that if I'm going to move somewhere, that my talents can be utilized for the community. And so that's why I chose to move to places that look like me. They're not affluent areas. I don't need to live in an affluent area, bro. I just want to be in a place where I feel like I'm home. And that Bronzeville, Pilsen, they felt like home to me, man. And my talents can be utilized here. Like I got elected. Case in point, I got elected, and that would have never happened anywhere else in the city of Chicago for me. It happened in this area because my talents can be utilized, and the community told me so. And so I appreciate that. So no, for me, I do believe in community retention, but I'm glad that I didn't move to some like Naperville-esque area. I moved to an area that resembles where I grew up, how I grew up, and the people that look like me, and I want to commit to the same level of work that I was doing here. I want to commit to the same level of work there, if not more.
And that's something that, me being a future father, I've even thought about when it comes to having children, right? Because I was going to ask, being a part of community and having that feeling like you're home, is that something you thought about that you also want your son to experience?
Oh, all day.
That you don't want him to grow up feeling out of touch or out of place, or because people don't look like him or talk like him.
And there's challenges to work. Like if you raise a kid in like, let's say like a Naperville or like a Lincoln Park, a very affluent area, right? There's going to be pros and cons to that.
Right. There's going to be different challenges.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. For me, the way I've talked about it with my wife is like, I do want my kid to grow up in reality. I want my kid to understand that there are certain challenges in life, and it depends on where you come up from. I think to balance that, my wife and I, we make great money. We're successful. We're successful young adults, and Lord willing, that will continue. So he's not going to have the certain challenges that I had because I come from a low income area. I come from a low income family. Right. We've done good for ourselves. So the challenges that he's going to face are not going to be the same that even though he might be growing up in an area. Well, it's still a nicer area than when I was growing up. That's for sure. He's not growing up in the East Side of Aurora in the 90s. Right. But there's going to be different challenges with that. But for me, I always want my child to be cemented in reality, understand like what it really takes, how life really works, But I looked at it myself. I have to be the one to produce that and to give that experience. Because again, to your point, we want better for our kids. Just like my mom wanted better for me, like my grandparents want better for them. Right. So that's always going to just be a natural process of life. But I just never want my kid to get so big headed or think like
that they develop this entitled mindset.
Right, exactly. Because we plan on getting him a little debit card, and making sure that he has a job and he's working. So I want my kid to work. I want my kid to have to struggle a little bit. Obviously, look, mom and dad are there. We're gonna help out. That's what the American dream is about, right? But I don't want them to grow up to be this entitled jerk where it's like I deserve everything.
Right.
I'm not gonna work for anything. No. You got to put in some work, buddy. Just like everybody else. It'll be a little different, right? Because we work to make it be a little different for you. Yeah. But I want him to know what it is to get it for himself.
For sure, man. And as we get towards the end, what was your vision for Aurora before you left, and then passing the baton on to Nick? And have you seen that vision kind of go to where you wanted it to go, or maybe it went a different direction, but it's still just as good as what you envisioned it?
I mean, growing up with some of the future leaders that are already in positions here, man, the city was always in good hands, man. It was always, and Nick and people like him are a testament to that. They're active, they're engaged. And we live in a situation now where across the country, man, young folks are just not engaged. They're not participating in the politics and the process. And hence, why we're in a lot of the situations we're in right now is because like the wrong people get involved. And so to see like folks like Nick out there in the trenches, man, getting it and having fun with it too, the city's in good hands, man. It didn't matter the direction because I knew it was positive regardless. And having somebody, I'm honored to even say that Nick was like, my intern at one point, man. That dude surpassed me a couple times. So, the city's in good hands. The leadership structure is there. It's in good hands. I mean, there's not much that there's not much. Nick's holding it down, man.
He is, man. He's
holding it
down. He's a solid brother, man. He really
is. He is.
Really
and shout out to everybody else like him that's doing the work. That's really what we need. It's really just about getting the right folks in the positions, and people like Nick, man. Those are the people that you really need to have in those elevated positions because they really care about the people.
Most definitely, man. Most definitely. Shout out to you, Nick.
Yeah, shout out, Nick. Yeah. So what's some last pieces of advice if there's a young college kid or high school kid wanting to get into politics? What is your last piece of advice for them that you could leave them with?
I would say don't be intimidated. I think when we think about politics, we think about these individuals that are like Ivy League grads, have like the IQ of like Einstein. It's like you don't got none of that, man.
Right, you don't need all
I know some people that went to Harvard. I'm like, did you really just pay for you probably just pay for the degree, And so I want people to understand that like you don't have to come from like a top 10 school. You don't have to have like this or that. You just have to have the passion, dedication, and the ability to just listen, and learn and want to be better and want to make your community better. That's all you really need, man. And some common sense. Right. I would say common sense is probably the most important one. But if you got that, I mean, you got the basics to be a great leader. And just try it. Don't be afraid. Like I was telling a group of kids in North Park, man. If you don't see the way, make the way. Because I think too often people look for the path to be kind of pre-assembled for them. It's like, look, sometimes that happens where the people have traversed the path. The path is there. You can see it. You just got to traverse it yourself. But oftentimes, man, there is no path. You got to build that bad boy yourself. Don't be afraid to put in the work. It's probably going to take a little bit more. You might deviate here and there, but the path is still being built. You got to see it through. And so don't be afraid, man. Don't be afraid to get laughed at. Again, you're gonna take those L's, but if you're really passionate,
your heart's in the right place.
Your heart's in the right place, man. You're gonna get there. You're gonna get there. I took a couple L's myself, but we got there, and we're Lord willing, we're gonna keep going.
Yeah. No, you're 100% right, brother. Well, we want to say thank you, man, for taking time out of your day to come and to shoot the podcast with us.
Thank y'all. It's an honor.
Appreciate
everything
it, man. Appreciate
that you have talked about and discussed today fits right in, with what we're doing with the podcast. And everything else that we have going on around and everything else that you have going on. So, thank you again. I know you got to get back to the little one because, got a little upset stomach,
Yeah. Sorry, Juju. I told them that you were hurting a little bit.
Yeah, man. Yeah. But, man, we can't say thank you enough. And as always, to our viewers and our listeners, thank you for watching and thank you for listening. And we'll catch you guys on the next episode.
Peace.
Peace.